assumptions into it. And then there is one method of statistical inference, which is hypothesis testing. It involves making assumptions, which are called hypotheses, and then determining whether the data supports this hypothesis. So you just assume that something is happening in your country, and then you check if your assumption is true based on the data that you collected. Common steps in hypothesis testing include defining a null and an alternative hypothesis, choosing a significance level, which is the sigma value, computing test statistics, and making decisions based on the p-value or critical values. Those methods are really complex, and it's usually the work of statisticians to make those calculations. But luckily, there are some programming languages that now, or programs that now allow everyone to make these calculations. Those programs are SPSS, which is quite old, but it's still being used and it's really useful for making hypothesis testing. Then we have R, which is a programming language. It's commonly used in the biological and medical field. And then we have Python, which is the newest and best way of doing it, but it's not yet very completely adopted by the community. In particular, let's speak about the process. The null hypothesis, it's the center of the distribution that you define using the algorithm that you choose for doing it. And then you can reject this null hypothesis in the case that your data falls in the tails of your distribution. There are many algorithms for doing this, and the programs or programming languages that I mentioned are great help for doing this without statistics degree. But it's important to understand that the sigma value refers to how much in the tail of your distribution you need to be to reject the null hypothesis. So it means that you can have a 1 sigma, which probably it's a route around the place shown in this image, or you can have a confidence of 3 sigma, where the tail, the place where you reject the null hypothesis in the tail, it's farther in either side, or even 5 sigma, which is more on the sides. This means that probably in this case, you can say that you are 80% sure about your null hypothesis, or you can have 3 sigma, 99%, 5 sigma, and 99.9. That's the meaning how sure you are about your null hypothesis. And lastly, let's speak about regression and correlation analysis. Regression analysis is a statistical method for examining the relationship between a dependent variable and one or more independent variable. For doing this, it's common to use linear regression, the most basic type of regression. And this is where the relationship between the variables is modeled as a linear equation. What does all of this mean? It means that if we have some data, these red points that are distributed over the plane, you can assume that there is some pattern behind your observations. And in the case of assuming that